heartbreaking. It's true, it's been a while, 25 years. Do you remember me?
I do, Jerry Garcia.
Thank you. I think I recognize some of you. My God, how you've aged. It is true, my brief visit in 1991 was not an earth-shaking event. No socialist revolutions in sight, certainly not here. But I hope I made a good impression on some of you. Have you been getting off your asses? Once more, I approached the committee out there for permission to travel. What I've seen and read since my last visit has made me furious and a bit depressed. The committee queried me, why was you return again so soon, and what makes you so special? We've tabled applications from Mother Teresa, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Jonathan Swift, your buddy Bakunin, even Mohammed and Christ. It's only been 25 years. You waited over 100 for your last trip. I replied, you know as well as I, if an ecological global revolution does not happen soon, there may be no human drama to watch from our protected purgatory. They had no answer for that. While the committee was considering my case, I tried to marshal support. Nelson Mandela said, I didn't end apartheid to see it all go down. Send him back. Thomas Hobbes declared, I told you so. It's just as I predicted, a war of all against all. What can he do? Your President Lincoln made a stirring speech on my behalf. Gertrude Stein used, a Marx is a Marx is a Marx. We know what they'll be getting. Buddha meditated in silence for a week, then spoke. Why can't they send someone who has compassion for his enemies as well as his friends? Jesus gave his qualified support. Many Christians would crucify me again if I returned. Perhaps Socrates tipped the scale in my favor. I like what Marx did last time. Maybe he will finally start a dialogue. Doesn't seem to be much of that down there now. Well, they said, we'll let you go again. And this time we'll send you where you want to go, but make it short. And please try and be a little more diplomatic. The bureaucracy out there drives me crazy. Why have a haven for controversial figures if their only goal is to co-opt us? Their efforts with me have been relentless. They hope I'll come around to their way of thinking. I'd rather go to hell. So here I am, this time in Brooklyn, New York. They claim the demographics might favor me here. Demographics? Well, I admit it's nice to have supporters. I hope I'm not just preaching to the choir. Why have I returned so soon? It's only been 25 years and no world revolution, and I no longer really have to clear my name. Or do I? Lately, my ideas seem to have gained some currency. They call it political capital. Here, everything, and I mean everything, is reduced to capitalism. At the moment, my diagnosis seems correct to almost everyone. Even the bourgeois press has noticed the 1% and the 99%. And the 1% is determined to keep what it has and garner more wealth at everyone else's expense. Yes, capitalism is a brutal disease. Endless suffering in nations which appear to progress. Economic miracles that are only temporary concentration of wealth among the few. The 118 richest families in the world own 50% of the wealth. Ceaseless, devastating wars, so-called natural disasters caused by industrial waste which threatens our very existence. Die Scheiße des Kapitalismus. The excrement of capitalism. Yes, I have much to account for, much to learn, some explaining to do. But there are other reasons why I have returned. I feel the need to clear a few things up, to speak more candidly about my personal life, my family, friends, and enemies. Things I might have equivocated about before. After the committee expelled me from the anger management class, at their urging, I joined a men's support group. Of course, I cannot reveal their names. Confidentiality. The support group hopes that personal revelation will quell my anger. I think about my wife Jenny every day, my daughters, Eleanor, Jenish, and Laura. They were all sent to what the believers call heaven. Even my friend and collaborator Engels, they all must have an innocence of spirit I don't possess. This notion of heaven is probably a hoax to keep me in line. They dangle the hope of reunion with those I love. I miss Jenny. Without her, I don't think I could have survived all those years in exile, an impoverished, marginalized emigre, largely ignored. And Jenny, the daughter of aristocrats, the life she would have lived if she remained in Germany, but she followed me to Paris, Brussels, London. We were both influenced by her father, Baron von Westphalen, a child of the Enlightenment. Like him, we believe that human beings could create a better world on earth in this life through reason, action, and sacrifice. Yes, Jenny's life of sacrifice with me was freely chosen. They did not call her Red Jenny for nothing. She was a staunchly independent revolutionary and my most discerning critic. Perhaps my bourgeois detractors are not all wrong. Should I have subjected her to all we suffered in London? reduced to beggars, pursued by bill collectors, pleading for money, garbage everywhere, living in conditions only Charles Dickens could describe. The death of our children, Guido and Francesca in infancy, and Whoosh when he was 8, the endless sickness of those who survived, Jenny's battle with smallpox that left pockmarks on her face, her final battle with cancer. It is difficult to say this. I failed Jenny. An aging woman convinced she has lost her beauty, and of course I could not restrain myself. Yes, I was unfaithful with Lenchen. Lenchen, our servant girl, Jenny's mother sent us Lenchen to help with the children. Jenny and the girls loved her. She was part of the family. I poisoned all this with my human needs. Jenny sensed what was happening when I would look at Lenchen in that way, what feminists call the male gaze. Engels and I write about how human beings objectify one another, how men turn women into objects, into commodities. Their focus on outer beauty, body parts, alienates them from the possibility of fully human relationships. I suppose this makes me something of a hypocrite, unable to resist the charms of a younger woman. Yes, it came to more than Lenchen soothing my boils with cloth soaked in warm water when Jenny was away. We were intimate, and more than once. And yes, Lenchen bore my child. Engels claimed to be the father to avoid a scandal. He confessed it on his deathbed. Marx, not Engels, was the father of Lenchen's child. Jenny forgave me, of course, her magnanimity, her emotional generosity was profound. She had compassion for the failings of human beings, far beyond what I could muster. She did not share the Victorian morality of the upper classes, but she did lose confidence as a woman. And what happened with Lenchen did not help. The simple truth is that I betrayed Jenny, the love of my life. We carried on as loyal couples do, friends and comrades until the end, and there was much love, but something changed that could not be repaired. And Eleanor, my Tussie, could no longer view me in the same light when the truth about her brother, my son, who we gave up for adoption, was revealed. I suppose I am being too hard on myself, but now, after all these years, I feel such regret. The support group has not left me off the hook on this one. They call it Karl's fundamental narcissism. Some of your presidents seem to have had it. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Bill Clinton, your martyred Kennedy. You seem to have forgiven them. Can you forgive Hannah Arendt for loving that philosopher, Martin Heidegger, who became a Nazi. Can you forgive me? Can I forgive myself? I ask you, do my human failings disqualify my ideas? My ideas. Sometimes I wish I was wrong about capitalism. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had progressed? Listen to this. The majority of the world population are poor or near poor, with contaminated water, not enough food, no health care, living in shacks or worse, on $1 a day or less, garbage everywhere. Situations that almost make Dickens' slums look like paradise. In 2009, the 38 largest companies in the US earned $140 billion in net profit. The CEO of Goldman Sachs took home $68 million in 2008, the year of the Great Recession. In 2014, the CEO of Cheniere Energy made $142 million. The vast majority of African Americans expect to go to prison at some time. Millions of women and their children thrown into poverty by the war on welfare. 5 million immigrants deported during the Obama administration. 50,000 children facing deportation because they fled from Central American countries the U.S. has destroyed through its policies. Trillions spent on wars in Afghanistan and Iraq while millions of U.S. citizens lose their homes. Massive cuts in social programs and food stamps. Massive bailouts and tax cuts for the rich. My ideas speak for themselves. I wish they were dead. But my ideas are not dead. They live in history, the real world, not as we conceive of it, but as it is. Human suffering is not an illusion, despite what some of you may think. Yet all of this is not brought communism, even socialism. Today, all nations fight for their niche in the capitalist system. They seek to prosper at others' expense. They all compete in a Hobbesian war of all against all. Yes, Stalin was not the only tyrant hiding under the banner of communism. In China, millions dead under Chairman Mao's watch and so-called social democracies. Welfare states of Scandinavia, Northern and Western Europe, how have they ever eroded in the last 25 years? Before he was sent to heaven to join his wife, Rosalind, Howard Zinn convinced the committee to let him visit where I reside, out there in purgatory. Everybody loved him, and with good reason. He was the only activist before Bernie Sanders who could unite the left. His treatment of the tradition of protest gave people hope. His life as a dissident was an inspiration to us all. And there was also something almost indescribable in the way he challenged, amused, and comforted us during the most difficult times. Of all the people he might have visited, he insisted on seeing me. My dear departed Karl Marx, you are a sight for sore eyes. I never thought the wonders of technology would allow us to bridge the century between us. No one in history has inspired me more than you. Your ideas and vision melt the chains of illusion and give us hope. But your nemesis, Bakunin, was right. You are a cantankerous, intolerant bull. For once I was speechless. No one I admired except Jenny and Eleanor had ever spoken to me like that. Have you anything more to say, Mr. Zinn? Howard pondered my question for some time, then spoke. Karl, the socialists and anarchists should be talking to one another. They are not so far apart. Their petty differences divide the movement. The father of socialism should show the way and engage with those he disagrees with. Don't just dismiss them. I'm counting on you. I shrugged my shoulders and shook his hand. Howard, if the place they are sending you actually exists, please give my love to Jenny and the children, and my best to Engels. Bakunin, that pompous ass. Actually, Howard is right. And I have made an effort. We do occasionally speak. We really can't avoid one another. But we are not exactly friends. One day, we watched a documentary the committee had recommended. Community building in Brooklyn. In the discussion that followed, Bakunin took center stage. Whatever you may think of me, Herr Marx, Peter Kropotkin was right. Mutual aid is everywhere in Brooklyn, a veritable anarchist society. Community gardens, free clinics, a progressive center called the Brooklyn Commons, with progressive performance and education on the left, housing, an alternative radio station independent of the bourgeois media, WBAI. People creating their own art, music, theater, and dance. Activists everywhere, building the society from the roots up. They even use the social media well. I tried to contain my anger, but my boils started throbbing, my face flushed. I reached for my beta blockers. I cannot fault their efforts, Mikhail, but it's like you pissing in the wind outside my window at the British Empire. You only putrefied my street. Mikhail smiled mischievously. Come on, Herr Marx. Don't be such a killjoy. Give the dialectic a chance. Yes, the dialectic, I replied. Things will only begin to change when the masses have had enough. I've seen some rumblings in the Middle East lately, but it's the religious fanatics and militarists that always take control. The masses, the humanistic classes are always co-opted or slaughtered. In the US, The capitalists have them by their private parts, especially in Brooklyn. I glanced at Buddha, who was looking at me intently. I'm sorry, Buddha, but I have to say it. I despise those greedy wealth mongers. To me, they don't seem quite human, more like monsters. Animals are angels compared to them. I would crush them if I could. You're right, Herr Marx, Bakunin chimed in. All nations are controlled by capitalists, whatever their ideological banner. They all use violence against the people to maintain control. Tyranny is everywhere. But until we smash them all at once, the people have a right to build their lives. Don't be such a sectarian. Give Brooklyn its due. The Brooklyn lobby applauded. Buddha, now joined by Christ, stared at the floor, waiting for my eruption. I was boiling inside, but somehow held my temper. I thought, why do I dislike him so? He's a revolutionary, just not my kind of revolutionary. Finally, I said, Mikhail, we seem to talk in circles here. I agree that all nations are corrupted by capitalism, and certainly the people have a right to improve their lives in any way they can, but for every grassroots gesture in Brooklyn, the capitalist Goliath crunches away. It's one step forward and 3 steps back. Why, Karl? May I call you Karl? Do you think that nations with armies commanded by communists or socialists will be any better than the capitalist monsters we revile? Come on, Mikhail, none of them are thinking. Socialists or communists like ravenous hogs, they all feed off the system. We need a world revolution. Now you're talking, Herr Marx, but how in God's name are we going to accomplish that? If I knew that, Mikhail, I would ask the committee to send me back for good. I could not resist a chuckle. Miraculously, my boils stopped hurting. The Brooklynites cheered. Bakunin roared with laughter. Buddha smiled. And Christ whispered just loud enough for me to hear. Perhaps they are learning to love one another. I glared at Jesus, but held my tongue. That pompous ass. I hate to admit it, but Jenny and Howard are right, and I have made an effort. We do occasionally speak. Why do we waste so much energy attacking one another? And I guess the support group has been all right, but why must they reduce everything to psychology, to consciousness? They claim that everyone is responsible for their own condition. This endless talk of karma makes me want to vomit. This vacuous justification of violence in the name of religion drives me up the wall, as if the people in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan brought it on themselves. I'll die before I cease my rage against that evil empire, the United States! but I am dead. Well, they can take away my traveling, even reading privileges, torture me, kill me again, end my hope to be with my family, send me to hell. I know what I know. Excuse me. When I get so angry, the support group recommends I place myself in time out. How humiliating. But I am a bit out of sorts, and I have much more to say. I need a few minutes to calm down and collect my thoughts. Would you indulge me for a few minutes? Thank you. See you in a bit. As if my temper were not enough, some of my humanist friends claim I'm a hopeless idealist. A child of the Enlightenment, they say, who still believes that through reason, humanity will progress. They fault me for my view of history. For Marx, communism is inevitable. Yeah. But whatever I might have thought when I was alive, I am not tied forever to my published works. And who is it that said we must learn from history? Remember, I'm not a Marxist. Actually, I like what Hannah Arendt wrote on the matter. That towering intellect who had the insight to raise the specter of bureaucracy in her treatment of totalitarianism. Do you remember her phrase, the banality of evil? And the courage to explore the possible collusion of some Jewish leaders in the Holocaust. From the preface of The Origin. This book is written against a background of both reckless optimism and reckless despair. It holds that progress and doom are two sides of the same medal. Both are articles of superstition, not of faith. An interesting idea of faith, unlike any of the religious leaders. For Arendt, faith is connected to the search for truth, comprehension. In short, comprehension means the unpremeditated, attentive, facing up to and resisting reality, whatever that may be. Reminds me of my notion of praxis, but deeper. I have learned much from Hannah Arendt. Still, since I was last here, I've become worried, even alarmed. The United States learned nothing from its World War II victory, its humiliating defeat in Vietnam. Whatever happens, the U.S. will not cease its efforts to control the world. And now the global ruling classes have embraced capitalism with a vengeance. They seem immune to any form of reason, their disregard of what science has to say about climate change. Do you believe in science? Many Christians in your country do not. When I was alive, science was the new secular religion, but I always asked the question, whose science, whose thought, whose education? Since then, I've become even more skeptical. Nevertheless, there is a consensus among scientists that if we do not radically alter our means of production and distribution, the planet will not support human life. There will be no communism, no socialism, no city on a hill. All will be dirt, dead, along with my vision of a new human history, kaput. Yes, global warming from industrial waste, ecological disaster happening as we speak, and the international business classes, the governments they control, do nothing. The ever-present specter of nuclear war, the consequences of low-level nuclear war from depleted uranium used in small arms. In every war the United States has fought since 1991, saturating the earth with radioactivity. Astronomical cancer rates among children in Iraq and Afghanistan. Abandoned uranium mines in the USA. Exposed radioactive sludge seeping into our ponds, streams, rivers, and lakes, poisoning the food chain, poisoning everything. How you take it? Why? The dialectic never anticipated this. The complacency, paralysis, collusion. Yes, collusion. What will history say about us? If there is a history. Yes, in South America they claim that socialism is not completely dead. The masses mobilize different versions of social democracy in Brazil, Bolivia, Chile, Venezuela, Peru. Are they being corrupted or defeated? We will see. And what is going on here? In the belly of the beast, the nation of Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Abraham Lincoln, Emma Goldman, Eugene Debs, Helen Keller, Dorothy Day, Pete Seeger, and Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X. This rich tradition of protest that Howard Zinn preserved. Why are you so silent? A nation of sheep. Yes, the Occupy movement started here and inspired the whole world. All too briefly, many think the Occupy movement engendered such hope. Finally, people were waking up. But did it peter out? The media with their screens, the militarized police tried to kill it. The occupiers were brutalized. Was that covered in the press? And then the ritual president election every 4 years. The hope that Obama would save us in 2008. In 2011, again, we are distracted from the Occupy movement. Obama sucks up all the money and energy on the left. And in 2016, we hope that Bernie Sanders would save us. Or better yet, that his movement that he catapulted will change the face of U.S. politics. We will see. Now I ask you in all sincerity, who is secure under capitalism? You answer immediately. Why, the 1%, of course, especially the 100th of 1%, whose earnings start at $20 million a year, with total wealth of many millions, even billions. But how long will they maintain their gated mansions and estates. They're Trump towers that reach to the sky. They're enclaves of natural beauty against the scourge of global warming, the creep of uranium, the hordes of starving masses seeking what they have because the poor have nothing. Will their private armies mow them down? What about the upper middle class? Better off than us, of course, 2 robust incomes, a little inheritance, a little nest egg for the future, a little place in the country to escape from the city, a little place in the city to escape from the country, a veritable American dream. But are they not? The loss of a job or two, one catastrophic illness, one natural disaster, one great recession, depression away from poverty. And what will happen if capitalism collapses completely? If some, as some of my Marxist friends predict, where will they be? The varieties of poor, the old poor whose families pass on their poverty from generation to generation, those in despair who gave up long ago on crack and heroin, youth in gangs shooting each other rather than confronting the ruling class unless the rogue police shoot them in the street first. The new poor, millions of workers who have permanently lost their living wage jobs, educated youth deeply in debt, no jobs in their field, professionals, scientists, artists, intellectuals, cannot find work which uses their talents. The humanistic middle classes fall into poverty. Seniors, disabled veterans living on $1,000 Social Security a month or less. Single women working full-time, raising their kids on minimum wage. 14 million children in the U.S. live in poverty. 16 million without enough nourishing food. Many thousands of them in your borough. Every day the poor ask themselves, will I pay for food, medicine, shelter, heat? Your liberal politicians respond, let's raise the minimum wage to $10 an hour. They raised it to $15 in Seattle. They may raise it to $15 in New York. Do the math. $10 an hour, $400 a week, $1,600 a month, $19,000 a year for a family of 4 before poverty. But what does it really take to live in dignity in Brooklyn, New York, or anywhere in the so-called greatest country in the world? And why does the ruling class have so much? And almost everyone else have so little. But you know the answer to this question. And if you want the gory details, there's the internet, the blogs, the books by Noam Chomsky, all in print. Naomi Klein's book on climate change and the environment, This Changes Everything. And Amy Goodman's Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report. She warms the cockles. Do you think she would have me on her program? And I, Karl Marx, with my cast of characters that include Buddha, Mohammed, and Christ, who claim to alter events from above and beyond. God, if you exist, I challenge you to end this suffering. Why don't you get off your ass? Sorry. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. Oh, God, my boils. Am I telling you anything you don't know? I begin to wonder why I'm here, why I came back. You have your dissidents, your teachers, they are off their asses every day. Noam Chomsky, Naomi Klein, Amy Goodman, Ramsey Clark, Michael Moore, Thomas Piketty, Arundhati Roy, and Edward Snowden, to name a few. Have I anything to add to what they say and do? And what is to be done? Nobody seems to know. I think about my daughters. I feel so guilty about the way they died. Watching it all helplessly from purgatory. Could I have done anything to prevent it? The early death of my eldest generation that I lived to witness. Laura commits suicide with her husband, Paul Lafarge, to avert a scandal. And Eleanor, my Tussie, who practiced what I preached. A Renaissance woman in the Victorian era, author of important socialist feminist books. Great orator, her toured the United States and Europe, spreading the ideas of socialist feminism. Labor organizer, agitator, translator of important books. Madame Bovary in Ibsen's plays, a fine actor in her own right. Researcher and editor. She edited Das Kapital and was my first biographer. But it was her common law husband, Edward Averling, who was her undoing. Was it a suicide pact not honored by that psychopath? Or did he drive her to suicide with his philandering and lies? Or did he murder her to get at the inheritance Engels had left her? Or so that he could live openly with the young woman he had secretly married? All we know is that she was found dead from poison and it was ruled a suicide. Many were convinced Averling had murdered her, but he died 4 months later before he could be charged. Eleanor Marx, practically unknown in the United States, but one of the great socialist feminist revolutionaries of her generation, struck down by the society she was trying to change. Why? After raising our daughters in freedom, the humanistic education they received, all our talk of revolution, making the best of poverty, we could not quell the Victorian demon within us. Why could I not help the ones I loved? God knows I tried. But good intentions are not enough. As they say, the path to hell is paved with them. Yes, I need to say more about my character. Jenny called me arrogant and intolerant to my face. Howard and Jenny see in me a rigidity, perhaps an authoritarian streak, certainly an inconsistency, kind and indulgent to his family and friends until one becomes an enemy or disagrees with Herr Marx. To my enemies, I'm an evil genius. But to Eric Fromm, I'm practically a saint. Marx was a productive, non-alienated, independent man whom his writings viewed as the man of a new society, productively related to the whole world, to people, to ideas. He was what he thought. Contrast this with the impression of my colleague, Moses Hess. What a pity, what a terrible pity that the vanity of this man in our party is not satisfied with the respect and admiration he receives, but that he should appear to demand a degree of personal submission that I, for one, will never condescend to give another. I guess I am a controversial figure. And why am I so angry? Is it just the brutality of capitalism that sets me off? My support group is not so sure. They insist I come to terms with my Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality. Take heart, Herr Marx, and know thyself. I admit my religious friends are supportive, and Mother Teresa, Buddha, Mohammed, and Jesus. No, I'm working on my attitude. Maybe I will be worthy of Jenny someday. They do encourage me to hope, and they assure me that despite my flaws, my ideas are not worthless. On the contrary, some of their followers have adopted my ideas. I'm actually grateful to these religious leaders, although I remain a committed atheist. No. Could I be becoming an agnostic?
No.
Perish the thought! Why am I attracted to this sentimental hocus-pocus pie in the sky? I came from a family of rabbis. My grandfather's generation. Some of my humanist friends liken me to a secular Jewish prophet. Many of my critics, even my daughter Eleanor, suggest I'm a self-hating Jew, even an anti-Semite, because I use the example of Jewish business to illustrate capitalism. Now, if people want to believe in God, it's their business. But when capitalists and religious fanatics claim they are doing God's work and slaughter others in the name of their creed, they better watch out. And if socialism is nothing more than a secular religion based on faith, the socialists better begin to realize their vision on earth, or they are no better than the religious prophets whose ideas they condemn. Does socialism have a future? At best, it has a checkered past. My enemies hold me totally responsible for socialism's failures. But is that not unfair? Was Christ responsible for the Inquisition, the brutal wars between Catholics and Protestants, the Crusades? And how wrong so many claim I was regarding my ideas of how socialism would come about. I must admit, the 20th and the beginning of the 21st century almost makes the Communist Manifesto read like fiction. But there are rumblings, not only in South America, but in Tunisia, Southern Europe, and even in the minority communities of the United States. Yes, Black lives do matter, and the lives of indigenous peoples and ignorant and immigrant minorities, and gender minorities and transgender minorities. And if I have learned one thing from Hannah Arendt, it is that we must be wary about predicting the future. History will tell us where we are and how we came to be, and suggest to each of us, according to our needs and our abilities, what we need to do. And then we can only do our best. And you, who live in the belly of the beast, who know and care about such things, the humanistic middle classes, if you are lucky enough to be middle class, what is your responsibility? On my way here, a street musician was singing a tune I just can't get out of my mind. Why don't the humanistic middle classes get off their bloated asses? They talk their talk so well, while the lower classes go to hell. Simple platitudes they utter, while poor people languish in the gutter. Simple platitudes they utter, while poor people languish in the gutter. And they in festive mood, with fancy art and gourmet food. And they in festive mood, with fancy art and gourmet food. Children of the poor, with not enough to eat. Our children, every wish we meet. For they must have the best, till then we cannot rest. Till they must have the best, till then we cannot rest. Why don't the humanistic middle classes get off their bloated asses. Well, after what I've said, I wonder if the committee will ever allow me to return. And if I have no definitive solution to the problems I've posed, the crisis you face in your lives every day, why should I have returned at all? Jesus might have done better. He might have said, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Jews will not likely bring peace on earth by punishing others to right previous wrongs. If you can't love your enemies, at least don't kill them. And socialists, communists, anarchists will not likely bring progress through violent revolution and war. If we have learned one thing in history, it is that suffering often does not ennoble. Because whether we like it or not, people remember when they have been invaded and occupied, their loved ones tortured, raped, murdered, their children lost forever for some greater good or due to collateral damage. Yes, they remember, and sooner or later they fight back. Many seek revenge. The cycle of hatred and violence continues. War, it seems, rarely solves anything for very long. And your country, the United States of America, conceived in the idealism of Jefferson and preserved by Lincoln, has made a travesty of freedom and democracy here and abroad. You are no better than the empires of the past, and the sooner your empire dissolves, the better. Your ceaseless striving for wealth and power has sown the seeds of your own demise, and mark my words, if you don't change fast, you may bring down all of humanity with you. But as they say, it's never over till it's over. You who care and have not given up, I admire your attempts to realize what is best in human nature, the impulse to help others, to use your resources wisely, to share what you have, and never cease to oppose those who are so convinced of their superiority that others are not quite human. And yes, workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. Yes, I still believe that a better life, a life of dignity, is possible for all. You might say that Marx is going a little soft in the head. A hope for the future based on faith. Another flaw in his character, a crack in the pillar. Well, it's time to go. I sense this second substitute for Jesus, the third coming, may well be my last. Have you had enough, Karl Marx? Maybe now it's Buddha's turn. For the wonderful work they do and for providing me with this wonderful venue. I want to thank all of you who came out to support the wonderful work that Brooklyn for Peace does, and all the people who chipped in to bring this wonderful audience. And I do want to especially thank Kenneth and Joe for being such generous and sensitive hosts, providing good food and housing to an aging actor with back problems. And I want to thank WBAI for interviewing me. Now, with your permission, I'll entertain a few comments and questions if you like. Those of you who need to leave can do so. If you've had enough. I understand that. So, yes.
Well, can I ask at the beginning, Zinn, and you wrote with him in the Marx and Soho.
I'd love to, yes. I've been acting in community ensemble theater for many years, and some friends of mine gave me the script to read, Marx and Soho, and I read it and I thought, gee, this is a wonderful play and I can do this. And so I wrote Howard a long letter praising the play, telling him about myself. He responded with a short note saying, thank you for your generous remarks. Send me a few scenes and I'll give you permission. So I learned it and I did it. Had a wonderful director, Michael Fox Kennedy. And then I started doing it, and my 50th performance was at Brandeis. And Howard and his wife Rosalind came, and we shared a Q&A, and apparently he liked it very much because with a handshake and a glint in his eye, he gave me permission to do it anytime, anywhere I wanted, as long as I told him so. So basically, that's how it got started, and I've had the good fortune to learn so much about the movement in towns and cities, United States and Canada, Europe, even the Dominican Republic, and how this was during the Bush administration. Most people had just given up. People just kept working, and I was just one of the 10 things that they were doing. So is that enough? What else?
Well, yeah, no, that was it. But I forgot to mention at the beginning that Howard Zinn spoke for us at our 20th anniversary gala celebration. And we had actually a very nice recording of him on DVD if anybody would like to see it.
Little pitch there.
But,
A little pitch there.
Why did you decide to write your own play?
Well, that's a good question. I've been doing Marx and Soho about 250 times, and when Howard died, me and my manager had to negotiate a whole agreement with the Zinn Trust. And we worked out an agreement, which was fine. They wanted royalties, which was fine. I was happy to give them royalties, but every time I did a performance, I had to get permission. And we had to negotiate time and money and how many people, and so it got to be a burden having to get permission every time I did it. And eventually I came to the conclusion, well, you know, they have to give me permission. They could take away permission at any time. And I felt, well, you know, I've done it a lot. I may not want to do it much more, but I want to have control over when I get this character. I've devoted 10 years to working on this character. So I thought, well, you know, maybe I'll write my own version for which I wouldn't need permission. And that's what I did. And you know, Marx and Soho takes place in 1991. A lot has happened since 1991. And of course, I love Zinn's perspective on Marx. I don't think I could have done it if I didn't believe in the script. But I taught Marx for many years, and I had my own ideas. And also, I had these 25 years to comment on, so that's how it went. Others? Questions?
Sanders.
What about it?
Yeah.
What do you have to say about it? Other than the fact that you started in the same political party?
Yeah, well, we have some disagreements, but I have to admit that Bernie has probably done more for the left since Eugene Debs, maybe including Eugene Debs, and that he has run an extraordinary campaign, and he has done stuff that all the political parties and intellectuals and everything put together have failed to do, which is to unite most of the left. The question is, what's going to happen now? And I don't think that's up to Bernie Sanders. I think it's up to us. And I think he's right on that account. So I have great admiration and respect for Bernie Sanders. Yes.
So I was really interested in the emphasis on discussing Marx and Bakunin's disagreements and separations when they, as you are making the point in your play, appear possibly to have more in common than not. What made you decide to focus as much as you did on their past and present relationship?
Zinn does. They fight. I know you saw it about 8 years ago. You may not remember, but they fight like cats and dogs. And I think basically the problem of the left, to some extent, instituted by Marx, because he was such a combative, cantankerous guy, this notion of being right and everyone else is wrong. And all of you know better than I that this has poisoned the left.
Yes.
Completely. And to Howard's credit, he taught courses on Marxism and anarchism, and his point was that the left has to get over its childishness. The feminists would say it's boy madness. In other words, what we accuse Donald Trump of being, we all have a little of, and we should admit it, and women too. And so, yes, so I think it's important that, and also, Bakunin is such an interesting character. I mean, it has a kind of dramatic, I was looking for ways to dramatize it, you know, to make it interesting and to inject some humor. So Bakunin is front and center. Does that answer your question? Others, thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
So I don't know if people have read the biography of Marx that came out about 3 years ago by Mary Gabriel called Love and Capital, which I think is one of the great beginning biographies for people to look at and to read. It's totally different from the other biographies, and I won't go into that anymore. Second point was that I think you give too short shrift to actual movements, whether it's considered on the left or not, the movements that have been blocking oil pipelines and natural gas pipelines all over the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, but it
and there are a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, the problem is you can only do so much in one play. And I don't want to overemphasize what the humanists are doing. We all know what they're doing. It's not enough. That's the point that I think Marx would make. That whatever, all of our attempts, which are wonderful, and I'm sure there's people in this room who have done wonderful, wonderful work, and we're trying to block the pipelines, and we're trying to do this, and we're trying to do this. Meanwhile, the whole world is going to hell. So yes, we have to give credit to our attempts to save the human race and recognize, and also, we should not, it's very easy to say, well, it's all over. Why are we even trying? And that's why Hannah Arendt is so important here. But I think it would be wrong to just emphasize the positive things we are doing and not really face what's happening. We may be in for a fascist coup. Anyway, I agree with you. At the same time, you can only do so much in one play.
A sentence here or there might.
Oh, okay. I'm always changing it, so I'll consider your remarks. Yes. What else?
Have you had an opportunity to do this play for young people or people who are not political, and what has been the response?
Well, I've done it for some young people. I did it in Long Beach State in front of about 80 students and 20 faculty, and that's a very diverse, multicultural university. And it's not for me to say, they seem to like it. And I like doing it for young people. And I'm based, to tell you the truth, I'm not hungry to act. I respond to requests. It was wonderful to do a benefit for Brooklyn for Peace, make them some money, they deserve it. So I am not seeking audiences. I respond to requests. And the first question I will ask was, why do you want me to do this? And I'll do it for two reasons. I'll do it because people want to see it and they think that it adds something to something, or to make money for working causes.
Jerry?
Yes.
When Obama was first elected, some of us took for granted that whatever the support groups around him, that he would encourage those groups to remain active, and that the people who had organized and activated themselves would remain active. That's so flat. My naivete, because my dad was a WPA artist, I thought we were going to get a contemporary New Deal WPA a la Obama, and I was shocked when he first started hiring Clinton's economic hatchet men. Now, what is the possibility, from what you see with the energy or orientation of the people following Bernie, that it won't burn out again and that we won't all go back to sleep again?
I don't really know, and I think there's many in this audience who know much better than me. And I think each of us has our own perspective on what is possible.
Yeah, both.
So I will just stick to my generalities and leave it at that. I've said, and the question is, something is started, will it persevere, and how might it persevere? And people have all sorts of ideas, and we'll have to see that each of us, hopefully, will do what we can.
Are we ready for the revolution?
I really do. I think Bernie was calling for a political revolution, which meant that he wanted to change the nature of the Democratic Party. Well, that's a tall order from my perspective. The Democratic Party does not change quickly or easily. It's controlled by some very, very rich people and a lot of imperialists, despite its humanistic dimensions. So yes.
I was just curious about when you originally wrote this, and some of the pieces that you addressed in it deal with very, very current events. And
Yes.
I was wondering how often you sort of update it and add these things in. Is it something that you add into it, or is it something that you kind of replace as you go? And how do you choose?
It depends. First of all, I figure out where I'm doing it. And I added a lot because a lot has happened in the last few weeks. For the life of me, I can't memorize the acronym LGB. So I'm trying to say gender and transgender minorities, and I hope. When you get into that type of language, someone's always going to be offended. So basically, when I'm contemplating a performance, yes, I do. And the question is, can I really incorporate what's happened yesterday or last week? So I do change the wording, and that's the nice thing about being the author. I don't have to get permission to change anything. I can just change it. And it's very liberating. Yeah.
How much of it is ad lib?
Very little. I always go over the script and incorporate it in rehearsal. Yes?
The question I want to ask you is, I'm assuming that you did a lot of grassroots organizing and protesting when you were younger, and taking this route using art. What is the comparison to using art to communicate your ideas, as opposed to just saying you're gonna sit at a forum and, you're on a panel of people.
I was also the Liberty Union candidate for U.S. Senate 7 times. And that was what Bernie was doing before he wised up.
Okay.
So I've done quite a bit of both, and it's really not for me to say what's most effective. I feel that I've had a wonderful experience of learning about the movement, and it's a worldwide movement, and there's groups of activists in every town, no matter how conservative. And so I kind of built myself a kind of niche that I could never do as a political candidate, even in Vermont. So that I saw myself, and still do, as visiting a community, not leaving it worse. In other words, being a good guest and contributing something to the culture, and also learning about. I've learned a lot I've performed in probably over 100 cities and towns all over the world, and so everywhere it's groups of people who are struggling to do what they do, and so I've been very privileged and lucky to have such a to play this part. Yeah.
Do you ever get people who come to one of your performances and quarrel strenuously with your interpretation of Marx?
They do, sometimes, but not often enough. I think there's a lot to criticize. There's a lot to criticize in Zinn's play, and there's a lot to criticize in mine. I take some great liberties of imagination with Marx, and people who feel that it's not an accurate representation of Marx have every right to feel that. And I'm surprised how occasionally I would get these people who, there's a kind of Marxist who doesn't like to see Marx humanized. They basically, take him as he is and stop this bullshit about lynching and what happened with his wife and all. They don't like it, and they have every right not to like it. There you have it.
And you also, you don't take up, for example, the early Marx and alienation of labor.
I do.
Well,
When I'm talking about his betrayal of Jenny and his objectification of women, I get that from the economic and philosophical manuscripts, his essays on alienation and other early works. So no, I've read those essays on alienation dozens of times, and so of course you cannot, if you dwell too much on one thing, you have to make choices. There's drama involved, not just content.
Eric?
Yeah.
You've done a long performance. I don't know if you've had enough to rest, etc., and have a meal, but I'd love to invite you back to whatever venue again, and we could talk about your ideas coming from Veblen in relationship to Marx, and also, I'm forgetting the name of your friend in Amsterdam, the sociologist, Amsterdam, that Wisconsin.
Coco.
Yeah, maybe another time we could.
I incorporated, I had a whole 20-minute scene on Veblen that I had to cut out because it made it too long. In Noam Chomsky's recent book, Who Rules the World, he mentions Veblen. He doesn't mention Marx. Veblen is the most underrated social theorist in this country, and the Marxists and the Frankfurt School ought to be ashamed of themselves for the way they bury Veblen.
Right.
And of course, I'd love to champion Veblen, but you can't. And Gabriel Coco is the same thing. He's barely mentioned in circles today, and there's no one who knew more about what was going on than good old Gabriel Coco, and the books that prove it. But again, yes, I could write a play. I just saw this film, The Genius. Have any of you seen it? About Thomas Wolfe and
Matthew Perkins.
yeah, and you know, he just couldn't stop writing. A play has to be relatively short, especially if you're doing a one-person show, because people get bored very easily. So yes, I left out a lot. Yeah, that's the way it is. Yes,
Jerry.
couple more. Anyone else? Thank you.